Okay, when you have two equations that are nonlinear, so if one of the equations is not aligned, then they're two nonlinear equations. That kind of makes sense, right? And so both of these have at least one variable that's squared, so we know they've got some kind of curve to it. This one on the bottom is going to be, this looks like a parabola because it's got a y and an x squared. And the top one is going to be a circle because they're both x squareds. And they have the same coefficient here. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to use the same method we did when we had two equations with two unknowns. We either use substitution or elimination. And so since I see I have two x squareds here, I'm going to go ahead and add these together. So I'm going to rewrite the top part, x squared plus y squared. I'm going to leave a little space because I have a y value there, equals 10. I'm going to multiply everything in this top equation by a -1. I don't like to subtract because I tend, to make more mistakes when I subtract. So I multiply everything by a -1 so I can add these to eliminate the x squareds. And so let's see, that's going to give me now, I'm going to rewrite this down here, -x squared plus y. I'm going to put this over here because it's not a like term with y squared, so I can't add them together, equals a -4. Now go ahead and add these two equations together. And you can see the x squareds are going to eliminate, and it leaves you with y squared plus y equals 6. Probably should write a little bit smaller because it's going to take up a little more space. But what basically I have now I have y squared, only y's, right? And since I have y squared, I'm going to need to factor. So I'm going to rewrite this as y squared plus y minus 6 equals 0. So can you think of two numbers that multiply to give you 6, but adds to give you a +1? Okay, so it's going to be +3 and a -2. Right, because it multiplies to give me a -6, but when I add 3y and -2y together, that will give me this 1y. And now using the zero product property rule, since both of these multiply together to give you 0, then y plus 3 equals 0 or y minus 2 equals 0. One or both of them must equal 0, so we solve both of these for y. You get y equals a -3 or y equals a +2. Okay, so now we know what y is. We need to solve this for x. Now you can plug this back into either one of these equations up here, the original equations. Should we do y equals -3 first? And replace it. Let's plug it into this one. X squared minus a -3 equals 4. So I'm plugging it into the second original equation. And I'm going to get x squared plus 3 equals 4. So I subtract 3 from both sides. I get x squared equals 1. So when you square root both sides to undo this, right, the square root of x squared equals plus or minus the square root of 1. Because when, x could have been positive or negative, and then when I square it, it would give me a positive back. So that's why we have this plus or minus option over here, and so that's going to give us x equals plus or minus 1. Okay, so that's going to give us two solutions. It's going to give us a negative when, got to do this correctly here. When x is a +1, y is a -3. When x is a -1, y is a -3. So there's two possible solutions. But we also want to do the same thing for y equals 2. Okay, so we're going to plug that back into one of our original equations. I'm going to do the same one I did before. So x squared minus 2 equals 4. So we add 2 to both sides. X squared equals 6. Square root both sides, so we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 6. Cannot simplify the square root of 6 because it's made up of a 2 and 3. So that's as far as you can simplify it. So we also have 2 more solutions. When x is a positive square root of 6, y is 2. And when x is a negative square root of 6, y is a negative 2. So these are your 4 answers. You could go ahead and plug each of these into the top equation, since we used the second original equation to find our x values. You can plug them in and do the check with the top equation. So, 1 squared plus a negative 3 squared, does that equal 10? Yes, 1 plus 9 is 10. So we know that's a solution. You can go through and do that for each of these if you'd like.